Making headlines for this week of March 31st. A shifting agenda. Amidst mixed messages, a change in U.S. foreign policy in Syria appears to be underway. Audit the Fed. Third time may be the lucky charm to finally investigate secretive institution that is above the law. Declaring obsolete. Russia and China have pieces in place to finally replace the current corrupt financial paradigm with a gold standard. And environmental corruption. Evidence of cooperation with Monsanto may reveal why EPA was recently defunded.
With news around, upon, within, and beyond our planet, the program making disclosure official. This is Cosmic Vision News. Here is Jeffrey West.
Greetings and blessings to all. It appears that we have a number of smaller events taking place this week that are hinting to much larger geopolitical and geoeconomic changes that are unfolding. Depending upon one's personal vibration and one's personal worldview in this current moment, one is either eagerly looking forward to, or anxiously nervous or fearful about, all that is now being revealed in the world. This may also include some of what is not being revealed in the world, especially if one looks to the mainstream media as one's personal pillar of truth and integrity. For years, we have been fed the stories of conflict and the alleged reasons for conflict. Many are now seeing these lies and are actively asking courageous and intelligent questions to challenge the official narrative. Underneath, many have begun to see that positive things are happening that are beginning to change this official narrative, even though it is not exactly clear to everyone else. This is mainly because most people have not invested the time nor effort to meaningfully connect the dots to understand how seemingly non-related and non-connected events really are connected and related in profound and intricate ways. This is both the challenge and the opportunity in creating the new global paradigm that so many of us are claiming to want to experience. There is mixed information that the global cabal is in the process of being shut down, but this seems to conflict with the lingering stories of conflicts in Syria, Ukraine, and other locations. The destabilization of nations and the EU with this alleged migrant crisis. The calls to again build up NATO, the talk of another possible world war, and the alleged continued threat of Russia, Iran, and perhaps even China. Until certain dots are connected, many will not be able to wholly grasp and understand the nature of their enslavement to a paradigm of debt, commercial law, fear, illness, and separation that was created without their informed and democratic consent. Let's start this week in Syria and explore the possible signs of a changing foreign policy, particularly on the part of the United States. RT has reported on March 30th that Washington's priorities in Syria have changed with the new administration, and the U.S. will no longer focus on the removal of President Bashar al-Assad as a condition for ending the 6-year civil war, a top official has said. Our priority is no longer to sit there and focus on getting Assad out, Ambassador Nikki Haley told a small group of reporters on Thursday. Our priority is to really look at how do we get things done? Who do we need to work with to really make a difference for the people in Syria? Now, if a listener is going to learn how to read between the lines, these above statements may be interpreted in both a positive and negative way. The trick becomes in understanding the individual who is making the comments and what her or his true intentions are. In this example, if Ms. Haley is still working for the global cabal, her definition of what is in the interest of the Syrian people may be different than the definition of Russian President Putin, for example. In this case, Haley's statement was backed up with a comment made earlier that day by Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. Tillerson, referring to the future of President Assad, was quoted by RT as saying that his future will be determined by the Syrian people. This suggests a major turnaround for the U.S. and also hints that this global cabal is being shut down on numerous different fronts. RT reported the following about the previous U.S. administration and the former U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry. Since 2011, when the conflict in Syria began, Washington has insisted that Assad must go as the only acceptable solution for peace in the country. The U.S. has provided weapons and training to what it called moderate rebels in Syria, ostensibly so they could fight the Islamic State rather than the government. Leaving the State Department in January, now former Secretary of State Kerry acknowledged that the Obama administration planned to oust Assad's government by supporting the rebels. But that whole ballgame changed when Russia intervened in September of 2015. The timing of this seems synchronistically linked to several recent events, including the now public visit by U.S. Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, who went to Aleppo in Syria and proceeded to expose the U.S. funding and training of Daesh and its involvement in a proxy war in that country, even while certain people in the U.S. are screaming about alleged Russian interference in U.S. affairs. Gabbard has also had her piece of legislation introduced to the U.S. Congress to stop arming terrorists, referring to the U.S. specifically. A few extra links relating to Gabbard's experiences in Aleppo will be in the show transcript summary for this story. Peter Lavelle, in commenting for theduran.com, also believes that the Syrian war is beginning to wind down, and his comments include the Israeli involvement in some kind of solution.
Okay, what's going on in Syria right now? We had in the last few days the Israelis illegally striking the state of Syria again. Over the course of this 7-year war, Israel has done this periodically, and they claim that they're striking Hezbollah, the route between Iran through Syria into Lebanon. What's interesting now is that the Israeli ambassador in Moscow has been called to the foreign ministry for questions. This is very significant because it appears that the ISIL and its other terrorist allies are very much in retreat in Syria, and the writing is on the wall. Israel wants to make sure that it wants to be part of the settlement, and of course what Israel wants is the Syrian state broken up into small pieces, particularly along sectarian lines, so they can actually play one off against another. This is their tried and tested strategy for their neighbors for decades right now. Russia isn't going to let that happen, Iran isn't going to let that happen, and certainly Assad isn't going to let this happen. So we've again reached one of these critical points in the Syrian proxy war, and the very fact that Israel is making a push for some kind of settlement in its favor tells us very much that this war is beginning to wind down.
Following the comments made by Lavelle, an article by Martin J. on the geopolitics.co website also reports on the Israeli incursion in Syrian airspace, and this article goes so far as to speculate that Israel is playing Russian roulette with Russia. The article on March 27th has reported that the incident has added more momentum to the much talked of quandary that Israel is currently in, with the new U.S. administration settling in and a new dynamic in the war unfolding. Many are asking how long Israel can continue to straddle two opposing geopolitical agendas. If we are to believe the Syrian ambassador to the UN, who recently warned that his government's response to the Israeli strikes marks a new phase of the conflict, where Israeli attacks would merit further responses, then the current diplomatic apparatus is balancing on a knife edge. Jay adds that Khazarian Jews don't want the Russian-led armed intervention to succeed in Syria. That's why they are weaponizing every resource in the region to sabotage the whole operation. After Turkey was reportedly playing with the Syrian water supply through the Euphrates River, NATO itself is seen bombing the control mechanism at the Euphrates Dam. This is on top of the uninvited participation of the U.S. air and ground assets in Raqqa. There are also reports of deliberate U.S. actions against strategic targets within Syria. Russian insider reported on March 29th that Lieutenant General Sergei Rudskoy of the Russian military's general staff said on Tuesday that U.S.-led coalition airstrikes were intentionally targeting critical infrastructure in Syria, which could lead to major ecological and humanitarian catastrophes. The comments came in response to the act of aggression mentioned moments ago that saw significant damage and reports of deaths at the site of the Euphrates Dam. Yet, according to the recent report, the U.S. appears to have changed its foreign policy where Syria is concerned. Something may have already taken place to suggest that there are other forces at work attempting to shut down this global Khazarian cabal mafia. As we begin to connect this dot to other dots, hopefully the pattern will become at least a bit more clear as to the positive changes that are happening within the events that may not seem so positive in the current moment of now. In other geopolitical news, I stated several years ago on this newscast that a time would come when a threshold would be crossed, and all those who wanted to be whistleblowers but were afraid to be would finally begin to flood forward. The time would pass when information would be kept secret to maintain power, but that courageous souls would finally find power and support in coming forward. It may seem that we have finally entered that period of time where enough of a shift in consciousness has taken place, where it is now more cool or popular to be a whistleblower, even if there are still risks involved. Perhaps not by its own choice, Russia has recently made hints at entering the whistleblowing game. In a Russian Foreign Ministry press briefing on March 23rd, the chief spokeswoman, Maria Zakharova, was asked about the future of U.S.-Russian relations. Included in her response were these comments. To tell the truth, over the last few years, we've seen many strange things happen in Washington in connection with preparations for visits or talks by our foreign ministers. The U.S. State Department has more than once asked us not to announce planned visits until the last minute. This is not our tradition. We have been operating openly for years, but we have respected the requests we have received from our colleagues in Washington in the last few years. But what happened after that? First, the U.S. Department of State asked us to keep the planned visit quiet and not to announce it until the last possible minute, until we coordinated the date. We did as they asked, but a day or two later the information was leaked by the U.S. State Department and sometimes by the U.S. administration. Frankly, this put Russia and the media in a strange situation because they didn't know who to believe, the official agencies or the many leaks. Also, I would like to say, and this is Zakharova still speaking, I would like to say that if the practice of leaking information that concerns not just the United States, but also Russia, which has become a tradition in Washington in the past few years, if this continues, there will come a day when the media will publish leaks about the things that Washington asked us to keep secret. For example, things that happened during President Obama's terms in office. Believe me, this would be very interesting information. And Zakharova continues, our American colleagues must decide if they respect the diplomatic procedure, if they keep their word on the arrangements made between us, primarily arrangements made at their own request, or we create a few very nice surprises for each other. Now, Russia is known for not jumping into something without first having analyzed all the options carefully. Comments like these would not likely be given if there was not something that could reflect badly on the neocon Zionist faction of the U.S. government. The curtain may be coming down on those forces that have controlled the U.S. government and other Western countries for decades, and these comments may hint that this curtain is coming down faster than some may have liked or expected. In a world where the whistleblower is gaining increasingly greater respect and credibility, A statement such as this could be interpreted in several ways, depending upon which perspective one is choosing to accept more in this moment. The show transcript summary has the links to the official Russian Foreign Ministry web pages where this information is posted, as well as a link to the full briefing, where people can read responses to all the questions that were asked in this particular session. The page format appears to have been set up rather nicely, making it easy for people to choose which answers they are more interested in reading. Those who follow the Russian Foreign Ministry press briefings may wish to bookmark a link to the press briefings page to stay on top of their latest updates. What we are beginning to witness worldwide is a growing resistance to attempts by this global cabal to impose its agenda upon people, while using the media power to validate this agenda. And the people are no longer buying it. There are Muslims who have been protesting against Western attempts to smear their religion and use it as a tool of fear for their agenda. We are also now seeing youth of Israel beginning to stand up and speak out against the actions of their government and their leadership institutions, including those in the U.S., such as AIPAC. Author Max Blumenthal was recently interviewed on the Real News Network regarding a Jewish youth protest at the recent American-Israeli Public Affairs Committee, or AIPAC, conference in Washington. Among other key statements made by Blumenthal to host Aaron Mate, here is a sample of a few key highlights.
Well, I think what you saw with the so-called Jewish resistance, which employed some direct action measures and really put on a show of passionate rejection to, the sort of institutional Jewish establishment at AIPAC by locking their arms together, blocking entrances, unfurling a banner inside the Washington, D.C. Convention Center, was the culmination of a generational process. It's kind of a process I went through where you grow up. I think many of these protesters might have been a little younger than me, but you grow up watching the Second Intifada and the destruction of Jenin, the invasion of Lebanon and the kind of cluster bombing of southern Lebanon, the destruction of southern Beirut by the Israeli Air Force in 2006. Then in 2009, you're watching Operation Cast Lead, which is the first of these really major assaults on the Gaza Strip. 2012, there's another escalation with Gaza. And then finally, 2014, the most brutal assault on the Gaza Strip. And all along, Israel's moving to the far right continuously. It's the process that I laid out in my book, Goliath. And the occupation is just endless. And you see the mainstream Jewish establishment, you go to synagogue and listen to your rabbi, and they're just totally out of touch. There's an Israeli flag by the bima that the rabbi's speaking at, and you just feel like there's this dissonance between Jewish leadership and Jewish youth. And so these youth have come together. They've gotten organized. So they revolted. The revolt really took place in 2014 during that assault on Gaza. There was arrests outside Jewish institutions, and now it's just this massive force, and it's a real force within Jewish life, and that's what we saw on display at AIPAC. Liberal Democrats who are increasingly young do not support Israel. They are disgusted by the leadership of Benjamin Netanyahu, who is really someone who's always been aligned with the Republican Party. And they're looking for an alternative. And so I think we're starting to see much more of a kind of mainstreaming of the BDS movement, the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, and the kind of messaging we've seen coming out of not only Students for Justice in Palestine, but Jewish groups that have supported the BDS movement for years, like Jewish Voice for Peace.
Recently, leading up to the AIPAC conference, a 4-day marathon session was held on March 20th to 23rd between high-level U.S. and Israeli officials regarding the situation in Palestine. The official joint statement issued by both governments was very carefully worded and can be read in the show transcript summary for this story. There are 3 sentences worth paying attention to in this joint statement. The 2 sides agreed on the importance of implementing measures benefiting the people of Gaza, and in that regard, the delegations discussed the necessity of all parties to the 2014 Gaza Reconstruction Conference in Cairo, fulfilling their pledges to bring humanitarian relief and economic development to Gaza in ways that benefit the population without further empowering Hamas or other terrorist organizations. The United States delegation reiterated President Trump's concerns regarding settlement activity in the context of moving towards a peace agreement. And the third, the Israeli delegation made clear that Israel's intent going forward is to adopt a policy regarding settlement activity that takes those concerns into consideration. It is difficult to discern if this means that pressure on Netanyahu has reached a point where he has finally had to recognize that his only way out of his increasing isolation on the world stage is to accept a two-state solution, although this has been hinted. Of course, the Israeli government has a history of not following through on its promises or declarations. It is this history that the Jewish youth are beginning to resist and stand up against. What this may mean going forward is that the Israeli government's attempts to bully people into supporting Israel using the anti-Semitism card may no longer work, considering that Jewish youth themselves are now condemning the actions of their own government. In a few quick headlines for the week, this week has perhaps seen a shift in the policy of the Ukraine government as well. This may come as a surprise to some, but given the warmongering talk that Ukraine President Poroshenko has been dishing out over the last few years, it seems someone or something has suddenly had an impact on Poroshenko. The TASS news agency, in an article on March 30th, has reported that Poroshenko has ordered the country's general staff and defense ministry to take measures necessary for implementing a ceasefire starting from April 1st. This according to Poroshenko's spokesman, Sviatoslav Tsegolko, on March 30th. The whole situation in Ukraine has been a mess from the very beginning, with more than enough evidence to prove that the U.S. has interfered in the affairs of this country and pretty much destroyed the morale and hopes of the Ukraine people in the same way that has been done to numerous other countries. In France, leading up to the first round of the presidential elections beginning in a few weeks, candidate Marine Le Pen, fresh on the heels of a successful visit to Russia and a meeting with President Putin, Le Pen has boldly declared that she will be going after the global cabal if she is elected. Baxter Dimitri, writing for YourNewsWire.com, reported on March 30th that leading French presidential candidate Marine Le Pen has vowed to destroy the New World Order when she is elected President of France, sending a warning to European elites that she will dismantle their corrupt, self-serving institutions with my own two hands if I have to. The people have spoken, and their message is clear. The New World Order is finished, Marine Le Pen announced to a star-struck tour group at the headquarters of the National Front Party west of Paris. The elite are not safe hiding behind their propaganda-fueled media institutions, making unaccountable decisions in Brussels and silencing citizens who speak out against this insanity. When I am president, a tidal wave of revulsion will be coming their way, the likes of which has never been seen before. According to a documentary crew, the tour group burst into spontaneous applause. In a BBC interview, Marine Le Pen held her own against a hostile interviewer and laid out her own vision for reclaiming French sovereignty. When I am elected president, I will go to the European Union and say that I want 4 sovereignties back. Legislative sovereignty. Our laws are more important than EU directives. Territorial sovereignty. We decide who comes and stays in our country. We want borders. Thirdly, economic and banking sovereignty. I have the right to promote economic patriotism if I so wish, and of course, monetary sovereignty. If the European Union rejects Le Pen's demands, she says she will tell the French people they have no option but to leave the tyrannical superstate. Increasingly, as mentioned at the beginning of the newscast, there is a different kind of race taking place, and it is almost a race of who can come up with the biggest leak or the biggest declaration to go after the global cabal. Whatever it is, it sure is exciting to witness, and it is finally great to see so many people answering the silent and public prayers to do something to help make our world a better place. In the show summary transcript for this story, a link will be provided to an interview given by Le Pen in October of last year to an aggressive BBC reporter. In financial news, one piece of news that many following alternative sources of news are excited about is the announcement this week that apparently there will finally be an audit of the U.S. Federal Reserve. Greg Robb, writing for MarketWatch.com on March 29th, reported that a House panel on March 28th approved legislation that would let a government watchdog audit the Federal Reserve's monetary policy decisions, a move bitterly opposed by the central bank. Robb continues, the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform passed the measure by voice vote after roughly 30 minutes of debate. The bill was the brainchild of Ron Paul, the former House Republican and Libertarian presidential candidate and sharp critic of the U.S. monetary policy. Versions of the bill have twice passed the House by wide margins, but then stalled due to lack of support from Democrats in the Senate and the Obama administration. Analysts said the measure has a better chance to become law now that the Republicans control both houses of Congress and the White House. Representative Thomas Massie, a Republican from Kentucky, was quoted as saying that it is ironic that the arsonists that caused the financial collapse are now being given credit for putting out the fire. Almost every macroeconomist concedes in retrospect that the Fed's extended period of easy money led to the financial crisis. In a short article about this news on the Living Resistance website, this article simply stated that Washington is on fire with news that the U.S. House Committee lawmakers finally approved this bill to audit the reserve. Whether or not this is exactly true remains to be seen. However, this article also notes that the next step in this process is for the bill to be voted on by the entire House of Representatives. The main opponents to the legislation appear to be the Democrats and the establishment Republicans. Back in 2008, a YouTube video has shown the former chair of the Fed Reserve, Alan Greenspan, having made this admission in an interview.
What should be the proper relationship between a chairman of the Fed and a president of the United States?
Well, first of all, the Federal Reserve is an independent agency, and that means basically that there is no other agency of government which can overrule actions that we take. So long as that is in place and there is no evidence that the administration or the Congress or anybody else is requesting that we do things other than what we think is the appropriate thing, then what the relationships are don't frankly matter. And I've had very good relationships with presidents.
It is for this reason that the U.S. banking cartel, as part of the global cabal group of criminals, has been able to maintain the lie of the U.S. dollar and the fiat banking fractional reserve system. Former Congressman Ron Paul is now chair of the Campaign for Liberty. In an article by John McCardell on the Ron Paul Liberty Report website on March 29th, the following statement was made by Ron Paul. America's experiment with a monetary policy based on a fiat currency controlled by a secretive central bank will soon come to an end. The only question is whether Congress will take the necessary steps to orderly wind down the system, or if collapse will come from a series of Greece-like financial meltdowns, referring to the financial situation in the country of Greece. By passing the Audit the Fed bill, the House Oversight Committee has taken the essential first step in transitioning to a free market monetary policy. I thank the committee for its actions, and I applaud my friend and the lead bill sponsor, Representative Thomas Massey, for his leadership on this issue. In his statement, the president of the Campaign for Liberty, Norm Singleton, was quoted as saying that now that House Oversight and Government Reform Committee has acted, Speaker Paul Ryan and Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy have no excuse to not schedule a vote on Audit the Fed on the House floor as soon as possible. It's time for Congress to pass the bill and President Trump to sign it as promised. Then the American people can finally learn the truth about the Fed's conduct of monetary policy, including their dealings with foreign central banks, foreign governments, big banks, Wall Street firms, and other crony capitalists. Ron Paul mentioned one of the options as being a series of meltdowns, similar to what happened in Greece. This has not really been reported in the mainstream about all that has happened to this country and where Greece presently sits today. An article by Whitney Webb on March 3rd, appearing on the True Activist website, describes the current status of Greece, and it is not pleasant. According to this article, Germany's announcement that it will not allow debt relief for the troubled EU nation will force Greece to auction off the last of its assets and sign over its remaining sovereignty to the EU bureaucracy. Webb continues, with the Greek economy still in ruins and its government still drowning in debt, the government in Athens seems to have few options left, leaving Germany, the EU's most powerful member, to call the shots as a third bailout looms. Bavaria's finance minister, Markus Söder, has announced that he plans to take a tougher stance on the bailouts negotiation compared to previous deals, stating that new billions should only flow when Athens implemented all the reforms. Even then, however, aid should only be given against a pledge in the form of cash, gold, or real estate. Essentially, Greece must surrender its remaining assets of real, tangible value in exchange for more euros to make payments on its massive debt that can never be repaid. Indeed, previous bailout negotiations revealed that all of Greece's public property was valued at about 50 billion euro, a figure which pales in comparison to the price of the necessary loans on debt payments forced upon it by prior bailouts, which comes to an impressive 90 billion euro. Despite the obvious fact that this debt is insurmountable for Greece, no matter how much austerity is imposed, all of this assessed public property was forced to be sold per the previous bailout agreements. This newest plan would take all that remains. Folks, this is what austerity does to countries and its peoples. This is exactly why bailouts should not be taken. Had Greece gone to Russia and China instead of the EU, they very likely would have been able to hang on to their national assets. However, as Webb correctly notes at the end of the article, once again, Germany is set to be the biggest beneficiary of the upcoming bailout, along with multinational corporations and other states who plan to partake in the final plunder of Greece. This is what awaits any country trying to stay within the old, collapsing paradigm of debt-based banking. It is practices such as these that must not be allowed to continue. CVN has, from the very beginning 5 years ago this month, been stating that major economic changes were going to unfold. I have personally been stating this since 2005 and arguably longer. Historically, we know that we cannot solve a problem from within the same line of thinking that created the problem. We know that insanity is doing the same thing over and over while expecting a different result. We also know that it is a waste of time, effort, and resources trying to fight for changes within an old paradigm when that paradigm's very existence depends upon the opposite of what is claimed to be needed. Therefore, it is better to invest effort and resources into building a new paradigm that will make the old paradigm obsolete. This is what Russia, China, and the BRICS alliance of countries, allegedly along with many more countries now, have apparently done. From behind their more secure borders, where it was harder for Western cabal members to infiltrate and corrupt, Russia and China have been creating their own financial institutions and tools that would be ready and active when the day came that the U.S. dollar and its fractional reserve debt-based banking system would implode from its mathematically impossible debt. The system that profits and thrives from conflict, war, death, and destruction of our planet is no longer a system that is acceptable to many countries around the world. Until now, smaller countries had no choice but to play along with the Western banking cabal because their country would be invaded and destroyed from within, just like it has been done in numerous other countries. With this new system, Russia and China have begun sending signals to the world that they are open for business and they have the facilities in place to create new options for leaders and countries seeking to get out from under the control of this criminally corrupt financial paradigm and its controllers. It is also why China, and especially Russia, have been targeted aggressively in the Western media. The new system represents the death blow to the cabal system. The neocons and establishment Republicans within the U.S. are desperate to maintain their power, their control, and their wealth, and therefore they need the world to believe that Russia is a threat to global peace. When they say this, however, what they mean is that Russia represents a threat to their definition of what peace is. This is definitely not a definition of peace that most rational humans are seeking to experience in the world anymore. CVN has long been reporting on this and much more. China and Russia have been selling off massive amounts of U.S. Treasury debt and then receiving the worthless U.S. dollars and then using that worthless money to purchase massive amounts of physical gold in preparation for launching this replacement paradigm. Only recently, as in within the last 10 to 12 months, have business sources begun to acknowledge that something is very wrong within the current system, and there are hints of something bigger to come. China has finally had its currency included in the IMF basket of global currencies. China has also launched its own gold exchange. China and Russia have begun doing trade deals among themselves and other countries that have not used the U.S. dollar as the median currency of exchange. This is yet another reason why they are being targeted by the global cabal, a source of their funding. The stealing of money via foreign exchange is being cut off. China has been operating clearinghouses for its currency in major centers around the world. Russia and China both have international development banks, and they also both have international money transfer systems that can now isolate the cabal-corrupted SWIFT system currently being used worldwide. The systems appear to now be in place for a new paradigm. So there have been sources suggesting that certain financial structures needed to be in place before the beginning of the second quarter, which is April 1st. Before certain financial events could take place, certain geopolitical events needed to take place. There are some sources reporting that this has allegedly begun. When a sufficient number of the old paradigm controllers have been removed from their positions of power, it has been speculated that the new paradigm can be rolled out more safely and securely for the benefit of all. Paul Kaiser, in an article appearing on the Russia Insider website on March 28th, reported that recent progress made in streamlining trade in local currencies has brought Moscow and Beijing closer to creating a financial architecture that could facilitate transactions in gold. Another Russia Insider article on March 24th reported that Moscow and Beijing took another step towards de-dollarization with the announcement of the opening of a renminbi clearing bank in Russia on Wednesday. Local currency transactions were first used in both countries' border regions. Today, more and more Chinese and Russian financial institutes and enterprises are using local currencies to invest and settle accounts, as the yuan-ruble trade platform is becoming more established and the transaction network is expanding amid deepening China-Russia economic and financial cooperation. The Yuan Clearing Bank in Moscow will greatly accelerate trade in local currencies. The article added that it's no secret that Russia and China have employed a number of methods to slowly wean themselves off dollar dependency. Russia became China's largest energy exporter in February of last year after it agreed to accept payment in yuan. The dollar is slowly losing its privileged place in international transactions. All of this, however, is in preparation for something even bigger, a Eurasian economic alliance being called the One Belt, One Road, which is a more modern version of the Silk Road trading network. With all of this happening, and for anyone who has had the willingness to explore all of this and so much more, is it any wonder, therefore, why the global cabal members within the U.S. are especially concerned about Russia, China, and Iran? In general news, we focus on several agriculture-related articles this week. Edward Morgan, in an article appearing on the Prepare for Change website on March 22nd, has apparently revealed why Donald Trump cut back on funding on the Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA. While many were getting upset at Trump for going after an agency that allegedly is to protect the environment, it appears that this agency was not doing its job honorably. Morgan writes the following: corporations use big bucks and unethical tactics to influence regulators into playing their game to keep Americans in the dark about the dangers of their products. We should be able to trust the food we buy is safe, but when the people in charge of that are working to keep unsafe chemicals on the market, we have a huge problem. Morgan also states that while Monsanto is being sued in California by dozens of people who claim Roundup caused their non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, Monsanto had to provide over 6 million pages of internal emails and documents to the court and attorneys, and marked the majority of them as confidential so they would be hidden from the public. When the plaintiffs asked the court to make the records public, both Monsanto and the EPA objected. The judge did not agree with their objections and threatened to sanction Monsanto if they continued trying to seal documents, and found it in the best interest of the public to release them for all to see, even if Monsanto doesn't like what they say. The article contains images of emails that were made public and can also be viewed on the U.S. Right to Know website. The link to this website will also appear in the show transcript summary for this story. This information is highly damaging and shows the level of cooperation and corruption that existed between Monsanto and the EPA. Anyone who is thinking of going to their local council to make a presentation, this is the kind of information one would need to know and have to validate the calls for changing community practices, creating jobs, and making their community self-sustainable. A related article appearing on the Collective Evolution website by Alana Kettler on March 24th addresses the ongoing and increasingly vocal debate about the safety of chemical pesticides being used on food crops. Generally, there are two sides to the argument: those who support it and believe that washing the food with water is good enough, and there are those who believe that the chemicals are absorbed into the flesh of the plant regardless of how often it is washed. Those who seem to feel it is okay to simply wash the plants obviously are not thinking about the harm of putting those chemicals down the drain and into the water system only to be consumed later on. Buying organic does not necessarily mean anything anymore either, as many seem to feel it is only a money-making ploy. Kettler writes, regardless of what side of the argument you land on, it has been proven time and time again that chemical pesticides wreak havoc on human health. Throughout the years, putting toxic chemicals onto our food has been justified with the argument that doing so increases crop yields. But those crops are actually destroying the soil upon which they grow. If we wreck the soil and pollute it with too many chemicals, then what? Yield hardly matters in the face of utter soil degradation, and it's happening already. Studies conducted by the Chinese government, in fact, showed that 20% of the arable land in China is now unusable due to pesticide contamination. The UN have never really been trustworthy as an international institution, but the article does claim the following. 2 United Nations experts have recently called for a global treaty to not only regulate, but eventually phase out and ban chemical pesticides, moving worldwide food production toward more sustainable agricultural practices instead. The 2 UN members, the Special Rapporteur on the Right to Food, Hilal Elver, and the Special Rapporteur on Toxics, Baskut Tunçak, shared research with the Human Rights Council in Geneva showing that pesticide use causes 200,000 acute poisoning deaths annually. Elver and Tunçak challenged the pesticide industry's systematic denial of harms and aggressive, unethical marketing tactics, noting the industry has spent a fortune lobbying to policymakers and contesting scientific evidence proving the harmful effects of pesticides on both human and environmental health. Elver and Tunçak were quoted as saying that the assertion promoted by the agrochemical industry that pesticides are necessary to achieve food security is not only inaccurate, but dangerously misleading. In principle, there is adequate food to feed the world. Inequitable production and distribution systems present major blockages that prevent those in need from accessing it. The article adds that the report also offers solutions, urging for developments in sustainable and regenerative farming practices and demonstrating that biology in itself can replace the need for chemical pesticides, all while producing high yields of nutrient-dense organic food without harming the environment. The solution, really, is ingeniously simple. Allow communities to grow their own hemp and their own food so it is fresh to the market each day without transporting it halfway around the world. A community that is growing hemp and making money from it will be able to finance and pay for any and all biospheres, greenhouses, and vertical tower gardens to provide for the community while also creating jobs as well. Growing hemp cleans the soil from toxins, and it is also naturally pest-resistant. As well, people can grow food on bales of hay, which also helps to reduce and maybe eliminate pests. The problems are abundant, but the solutions are also available for informed people who are ready to start putting pressure on municipal governments to start acting on their own. It is my belief that politicians on the local levels of governance are affected by one of 3 things. 1, they are genuinely naive of the many solutions that could turn their communities around because they listen to people who profit from keeping politicians naive and uninformed. 2, they are informed about the solutions but lack the creativity and political will to implement the solutions, and this may also be a result of direct threats. And 3, they have been bought out by wealthy locals to maintain the status quo, so the local wealthy stay wealthy and retain their power. Any community can easily take steps toward becoming self-sustaining while creating an abundance of jobs. Finally, in health-related news, continuing with the next part on the series of articles relating to the current dynamics and the evolving nature of energies as they relate to relations between committed individuals. This week, we focus a little bit more on men. Okay, this may come across as being a bit more harsh to the men, but since I am a man myself, I can speak more for the male gender than the female gender and can apply things as much to myself as to all other men. It could be argued that things are a little bit harder for men when it comes to love and relations. The cards are stacked against guys because the world we have lived in has been a male-dominated world, and in family situations men have often been told not to be too emotional. Today's independent woman does not need a man to survive in today's world. In the old paradigm, that may have been true, but in an emerging new paradigm, women and men need attention, love, friendship, companionship, respect, trust, and yes, perhaps even faith. This leaves men with a bit of an identity crisis of sorts because they no longer know what their role really is in relation with their female partners. Women are being socialized to choose or reject certain men, as men are being socialized in similar ways towards women. At the same time, a lack of touch is destroying men. Mark Green, offering an article on this subject, writes that in American culture, we believe that men can never be entirely trusted in the realm of the physical. We collectively suspect that given the opportunity, men will revert to the sexual at a moment's notice. Accordingly, it has become every man's job to prove they can be trusted in each and every interaction, day by day and case by case. In part because so many men have behaved poorly. And so we prove our trustworthiness by foregoing physical touch completely in any context in which even the slightest doubt about our intentions might arise, which, sadly, is pretty much every context we encounter. And where does this leave men? Physically and emotionally isolated, cut off from the deeply human physical contact that is proven to reduce stress, encourage self-esteem, and create community. Instead, we walk in the vast crowds of our cities alone in a desert of disconnection, starving for physical connection. We crave touch. We are cut off from it. The result is touch isolation. Green also offers that is it any wonder that sexual relationships in our culture are so loaded with anger and fear? Boys are dumped on a desert island of physical isolation, and the only way they can find any comfort is to enter the blended space of sexual contact to get the connection they need. Men have become afraid of being labeled as sexually inappropriate by women. They are afraid to touch children for fear that it will be sexualized. They don't want to risk their macho status by being physically gentle, and they do not want to deal with rejection when they do reach out. As Green notes, at the root of all these flawed rationalizations is the fact that most American men are never taught to do gentle, non-sexual touch. We are not typically taught that we can touch and be touched as a platonic expression of joyful human contact. Accordingly, the very inappropriate, over-sexualized touch our society fears runs rampant, reinforcing our culture's self-fulfilling prophecy against men and touch. With the lack of touch and lack of emotional trust coming from a woman, men have often been afraid to communicate their needs to their partners. Dr. Jed Diamond, in his article, shares one thing that he believes men want more than sex. He writes, "Many of us remember the early school dances we attended. If you wanted to hold a girl in your arms, you had to make the long walk across the room with everybody watching and ask the girl to dance. If she accepted, you were in heaven. If she refused, you were in hell. The key here is that you must make yourself vulnerable to rejection, to hold and be held by a girl." By the time we become adults, we've already been battered and bruised by the world of competition and rejection. We long for that safe harbor where we don't have to pretend to be something we're not in order to be chosen. We long for someone who sees us for who we are and who wants us anyway, who can hold us and touch not just our body, but our hearts and our souls. Men have been socialized to not ask for this because it makes them look weak or not manly. It is often as difficult for women to give this kind of intimacy. Diamond writes, "First, women have their own conditioning about men being men. If he doesn't want sex, they worry that they may not be attractive enough. Second, a man wanting to be held and nurtured triggers feelings that they are dealing with a boy, not a man. Women want a man, but worry they have another little boy. Third, women fear men who don't feel manly. They know that the most violent men are men who feel weak and powerless. They've often had experiences of men allowing themselves to be gentle and vulnerable, only to have them respond with anger and rage later on. It takes a lot of time and maturity for men to admit to themselves that they need a safe harbor where they can be nurtured and embraced by a woman." A lot is known about the alpha male, but not so much is known about the omega male. Dr. Carol Morgan, in her article, looks at the omega male, however, and what makes him better than the alpha. She writes, "Unlike the alpha male, the omega male avoids risk and confrontation. In fact, they have a bit of distaste for the alpha males. While they can have a confidence similar to the alpha male, they don't need to be the center of attention. They are just content to not be the one who stands out, and they don't have a need to compete with other males to be the best." She describes some of the characteristics of the omega male. 1, they are introverted. 2, more laid back. 3, gentle. 4, kind. 5, empathetic. 6, they prefer deep relationships. And 7, wants to work on his own. And 8, not much of an ego. Morgan also notes that they might still accomplish just as much as the alpha male, or even more, but other people may never know. He won't announce it on Facebook or Twitter, and maybe he won't even tell his closest friends. He doesn't need the recognition or notoriety to pump up his ego. Yet, boys and men are often given the advice to just be themselves. There is this thing about being authentic, or just being oneself, and this means different things to different people. I say this knowing that every individual is different, and it is hard to say that one's own pain or pleasure is more or less than the pain or pleasure of another individual. Different people perceive their experiences from within their unique differences that come from all the life filters that each individual was exposed to during his or her life. Let's start with the first article from Mark Belden, appearing on the Good Men Project website on March 29th. In this article, Belden comments on 4 undeniable truths of being an authentic man. Belden writes, "Being authentic has a price. If it were easy, we'd all run around telling everyone their jokes sucked and their pasta tasted like a FedEx box. The hard part of being authentic isn't how you handle others, it's how you handle yourself. Authenticity requires you to know your inner states, emotions, and thoughts, both good and bad. It's one of those practices that sounds easy, but is really hard and uncomfortable when you are intentional." The 4 truths that Belden refers to are as follows. Number 1, you will question yourself. When you embrace who you really are, you will question why you did something shortly after. This is because being vulnerable is uncomfortable. You are exposed for all the world to see. Your ego wants to step in and protect you. Once you learn discomfort is a part of the process of being authentic, it becomes less terrifying and easier to accept. Number 2, You will get into the types of relationships you've always wanted. When you start embracing who you are, people start leaving your life. This is a good thing because it makes room for the kind of people you've wanted to have around you. Number 3, you will become polarizing. People are going to get hurt. Learn to separate from these moments and to not take it personally. And number 4, it gets easier. The more you act in alignment with who you think you are, the more you can process emotions without judgment. Being authentic may also build confidence because people may no longer react with judgment, but rather by sharing an area in their own lives where they have been struggling. Men have a lot of work to do, learning to not only heal the incomplete parts of themselves, but also to find strength in loving oneself, while embracing the authenticity that seems to define a male these days. Sean Swaby, in an article also from the Good Men Project website, addresses the subject of loving oneself. He writes, "Love both terrifies and it soothes. It can be a weapon or it can heal. It involves risk, vulnerability, and can take you to the heights and to the depths, sometimes all in one relationship, and sometimes all in the same day." Swaby continues, "Like many men, for you growing up, love may have been talked about, but it may not have felt real. Maybe you could never feel love and certainly not love for yourself. Because of this, love may feel uncharted and untouchable. It is easy to write off your need for love, yet it is important to underline that you cannot be complete without love. Without love, you remain in a cage with walls made out of nothing but fear and memories. It may be safe, but the walls will become your cage. Your feeling of unworthiness may be undermining your happiness." So, if you are an awake and aware man struggling to find yourself in a very challenging emotional and spiritual world, defining yourself becomes part of the journey that determines the kind of partner one will bring into one's life path. This applies to all genders and orientations. In an article that looks a bit more at heterosexual relations, however, Holly Riordan, in an article appearing on the Thought Catalog blog site, shares 11 reasons to fall in love with the spiritual girl. Her 11 insights are as follows. Number 1, she finds meaning in everything. She believes in signs from the universe. She's convinced that you came into her world for a reason, that you're going to give her something invaluable, whether it be scattered memories, a life lesson, or a permanent part of your heart. Number 2, she's authentic. She doesn't see the sense in pretending to be someone that she's not. She realizes that she has flaws, but that hasn't stopped her from loving herself and being herself. With her, what you see is what you get. Number 3, she is overflowing with love. She has love for her family, her friends, pets, plants, the moon, the sky, the galaxy. She finds beauty in everything that she sees, which is why her heart is so huge. She's forever growing. She understands that it's possible to have love for herself and to admit that there are things she needs to improve upon. She isn't perfect, but she keeps trying to reach her personal best. Number 5, she embraces the unknown. Most people are scared of things that they cannot see, cannot grasp, but she is different. She appreciates that there's more to this world than meets the eye, that there are secrets waiting to be uncovered. It doesn't scare her, it empowers her. Number 6, she has unwavering faith. No matter how many hardships that she's forced to face, she still has hope that things will get better. Her strength never wavers because she knows that the universe is on her side, that it's going to grant her happiness in the end as long as she keeps doing her part. Number 7, material items mean nothing to her. She would love to be greeted at her front door with flowers, but she realizes that flowers wilt. She would much rather create a lifelong memory than be given a temporary gift. To her, Forever means more than now. Number 8, she feels a strong connection to others. She can't walk past a homeless shelter or see a stray kitten without being tugged at the heartstrings. She feels like it's her duty to help her fellow humans and animals. That's why she's so kind, so compassionate. Number 9, she is one with nature. She can spend hours staring up at the stars, reading a book against a tree trunk, and running her bare feet through the grass. She feels safe in nature, nurtured by it. Number 10, she aspires to be at peace. Drama doesn't appeal to her. She doesn't want friends unless she can count on them, and she doesn't want a boyfriend unless she can trust him. She's all about honesty and sincerity. Number 11, she has a genuine love of life. She's not like others who see the world as an evil place filled with hypocrisy and hatred. She chooses to see the good, to focus on the love in the heart of humanity, the beauty hidden inside each person's soul. In another article, Kathy Parker shares her insights about what it means to love the girl with the guarded heart. We have all been hurt, and many have built up walls around their hearts, and I have done the same thing in my life. This is one of the life lessons that I am currently working to heal and release. Parker writes the following: "There is nothing simple about loving the girl with the guarded heart. She is not convinced by flowers and fancy dinners, nor is she won over by compliments and praise. In the beginning, she is a slow dance. One step toward you, another step back, as she learns to trust the ways of your heart and the strength of your arms. The dance may be slow, but it cannot be rushed, for she will sense the impatience of your steps and the way they fall out of time with hers. She will not show you her heart all at once. Instead, offer you a little at a time, unhurried and watchful of the way you hold each fragile piece. She will watch you closer than you realize, listen to every word you speak, and weigh it against every action, searching for inconsistencies, seeking the truth of your word and the intention of your heart. She will need more reassurance than most. She will need you to stay present, available, mindful of her scars. But beyond her guarded heart lies a soul that contains the wonders of the universe, one that longs to live and love with abandon, that desires connection and intimacy, and to be in relationship with someone who sees both her beauty and her scars, and knows how to fall in love with both. Broken, she knows what it means to suffer, but out of the depths of her suffering, she has come to understand love, and her guarded heart waits for the one who understands it too." In reading this article, I cannot help but wonder if women are able to be as sensitive to the man who has his own version of a guarded heart and can be as patient with us as women seem to expect us to be with them. For men and women, it is coming down to being not only authentic, but also being vulnerable and trusting, while also finding that special other who has the same qualities and the same awareness and courage to travel that path with you. Guys, if you are looking for a meaningful relation that is authentic, awake and aware, here is what you might expect from a partner. According to one article, most men cannot handle a deep woman. A deep woman struggles to find a perfect relation, but I might say that the same could be true for some men. According to this article, here are a few reasons this author believes that men cannot handle a deep woman. The author writes, Number 1, she is blunt and speaks her mind. Number 2, she has deeper conversations. She prefers going to the depths in a relation that most men fear to go. Number 3, she knows exactly what she wants. Number 4, when she gets intimate, it is in extremes. She is fearless when she is in love. She likes to cross all the lines and doesn't care if she gets hurt in the process. She takes pride in being intimate, and she knows that it is not going to make her vulnerable. Men often get scared with women who can be this powerful. Number 5, she is fearless and profound. Number 6, she wants a deep relation. She prefers a man with whom she can share her deepest secrets of her mind and expects the same from the guy she is dating. For her, love means opening mentally more than physically. She wants you to tell stories from your past and learn more about your best-kept secrets and fears. Most men, on the contrary, hate and fear dwelling in their past, and it makes them insecure. Number 7, she easily moves on. Take your time deciding the future of your relationship, and you'll see that she has no patience dealing with it. She won't wait. She'll move on. She is strong and invulnerable, and she can be on her own even if she is looking for something special to happen. So it appears to be the challenge, guys. Loving the woman with the guarded heart who requires patience and understanding, or risk missing the empowered, fearless woman who won't wait for you to make up your mind. Somehow, we can't give up. An article on themindsjournal.com explains why we will not give up. The article writes that sometimes we get exhausted, hurt, scared, or we think too much, but we are too strong to give up on love. We owe it to ourselves to be happy in all that we do, to be comfortable with our own skins, to be proud of who we are. We owe it to people who love us, raise us, and cultivate us to select a better half who's going to give us the same care, respect, and affection. You see, sometimes we get discouraged to give love a try because we're so scared to fail again. But we have to persevere, to be patient, and to be optimistic in searching for love, because one day when we're all curled up on the couch with the people that are meant for us, we're going to look back on our lives and be thankful to the moments that we didn't give up. Just before I get into this week's final words, I know that there are more than a few of you who are perhaps hoping that I will report more on alleged financial changes relating to currency revaluations and also on alleged arrests that have begun being reported by some sources. As far as revaluations of specific currencies go, I am not yet convinced that this event will happen the way some are hoping it will happen. Although I am convinced that the current paradigm, both geopolitical and geoeconomic, are going to disappear, it is not wholly clear yet how the new paradigm will look and how or when it will become available for all to finally see. Some sources have begun reporting, as of today, that high-level arrests have already begun, allegedly. This is nothing particularly new, and because I am not yet fortunate enough to have an insider source that I can personally vet and trust, I choose to be very careful about what I report regarding events of this nature. Again, I believe they will happen. However, I am also witnessing people reporting many things, and this information is later found to not exactly be true. I am becoming more convinced that there are sources leaking both true and untrue information to try to either intentionally disinform people, or there are sources trying to determine who is really making an effort to report on events with the greatest amount of integrity possible given the current circumstances. As I've stated in the past, I am not doing my job to become an internet celebrity with the most views or the most hits. I am trying my best to deliver information that is as accurate as possible based on the sources available to me at the time I chose to report on a particular story. I am unable at this time to validate whether reports of high-level arrests have taken place, or whether certain figures have been arrested and replaced with clones. Therefore, I am avoiding the direct reporting of this at this time on these types of events. Please know, however, that I am aware of and am observing these stories and reports. If a time comes when I have something more concrete, or when I have a source who reaches out to me personally and can validate his or her background in a way that satisfies me, then I will feel more comfortable reporting on this information. It is my hope that listeners understand that I am not trying to keep them from having certain information, but rather that I am trying to offer the best and most accurate information I am able to each week. In this week's final words, over the last few years, especially since December of 2012, we have been in a very vulnerable period. Many people were left disillusioned when events of 2012 did not materialize the way they thought, or the way others were claiming things would unfold. This disillusionment pushed some people away, back into their three-dimensional worlds to continue struggling along until some other answer came to them. Of course, the answer is already within them, but many were unable or unwilling to do the inner work necessary to bring this information to the surface. So many of us on different occasions, and at certain times this has also included me, have lost our abilities to use our discernment about the disinformation that is being put out now. We have lost this at times because we get swept up in the desire for positive information to validate the current belief that we may have about the world in this current moment. A friend of mine, who is also a practicing shaman, recently said this to me: "When we feel most desperate and in need of hope and good news, it is then we are at our most vulnerable to false information." This was her direct quote. Now, what she is meaning, of course, is that so many of us have felt varying degrees of disillusionment because we had our own uniquely different expectations of what would happen, how it would happen, and when it would happen. Our focus was only on one way that something could unfold, and when it didn't, we were left confused, sad, and perhaps angry and bitter. In other words, we missed the lesson. We are all worthy in our uniquely different and equally beautiful ways. An unknown individual, going by the screen name One Who Knows, posted these 2 paragraphs on a website this past week as part of a short commentary on worthiness. The individual wrote the following: "The bottom line is that being worthy was a control concept and creation of the cabal. They were the ones who told us that we were born sinners. Nothing could be further from the truth. We are all God creators, playing wonderful parts, helping each other learn together. To say that one is worthy is to say that another is not, and that is untrue. No matter the parts we are all playing, all are personal choices for personal reasons. In that regard, every part is extremely worthy, as it serves our personal life plan and chosen path perfectly. But worthy? No such thing, not in this universe. It is only creation and experience, becoming wisdom in the end. Besides, if there is anyone to thank here, it is yourself for choosing this part and setting up the circumstances of your life to put you in this place at this time for this reason and this experience. So enjoy it." Yes, it is easier said than done, and this is all the more reason why it is so important to connect with people of a similar vibration and frequency so we can help and uplift each other in those moments when we forget who we really are. This week, I'm going to close with a timely reminder from an entity known as Bashar and received through his channel, Daryl Anka. For those who may not believe in these kinds of sources, I ask you to look beyond the source and just listen and feel the energies in the message itself. This will be a potentially mind-blowing message for many, and some will have to listen to it 2, 3, or even 4 times to fully grasp what is being shared here. This message focuses on how we miss greater opportunities because we are so focused on having certain things happen a certain way. In this particular example, Bashar is referring to the question of abundance, a question that is rising more and more to the surface of so many who have been attempting to do great service for humanity and the planet while also struggling financially. This is a message that is meant as much for me personally as it will be for the vast majority of CVN's listeners. Create a wonderful week. Until our next moment of now, here is Bashar via Daryl Anka reminding us about abundance and trusting what is.
The crust of my question is really, I have the old baggage, so to speak, of times when I used to do that, what I thought was 100%, and enjoying it, but having, monetary problems.
But then you knew you were not really doing it 100%. Because again, understand, it's all about defining the concept of abundance and how you relate to the concept of abundance. Are you familiar with our definition of abundance?
I don't think so.
All right. I will share it with you if I may.
Okay.
Oh, are you paying attention?
Yes, I am.
Abundance. The ability to do what you need to do when you need to do it. Period. Did you hear anything in that definition that said anything about money?
No.
Did you hear anything in that definition that said anything about any particular way in which the abundance had to come?
No.
The ability to do what you need to do when you need to do it. That's abundance. Period. Now, it can come in the form of money, but we understand that on your planet very often you are trained to think that money is the only representation of abundance, and when you have a definition that focuses you on money being the only doorway through which abundance can come, then you're actually closing and locking all the other doorways through which the ability to do what you need to do when you need to do it could actually come to you, because you refuse to identify or label those things equally as abundant as money. You follow me?
I do follow.
Now, when you allow all manner of abundance to be equal and equally valid, then whatever is the way that is the path of least resistance can come to you, be it money, be it someone gifting you something, being it that you simply synchronistically happen across a circumstance that allows you to do what you need to do, be it any way that it may come. Then when they're all equal, the one that is the path of least resistance can flow to you without resistance, because you are allowing it not to have a specialness that singles it out and focuses an undue amount of energy on that particular way needing to be the way to manifest your abundance. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so, in moving forward, now with your new understanding of following your excitement, can you apply this definition to the idea and trust that whatever form of abundance needs to be there to allow you to do what you need to do will be all right, even if it doesn't come in the form that you might expect it ought to?
Well,
that usually means no.
I'm trying really hard.
Oh, I know, but you see, that's the problem.
I know.
Don't try so hard.
I'm one of the people that complicates things more than needs to be.
All right, well, so I guess you find that a help.
But I guess that's part of my problem. My question was, is trying to strip away those old belief systems and things that I have experienced in the past for whatever reason.
Yes, well, here's the paradox. And it goes back to the issue of saying that you don't want to waste time. Spending time going through the process. The more you enjoy the process itself, the faster it will go. That's the paradox. The more you're all right with the process itself of discovering what your beliefs are as an act unto itself that's worth having, the faster it will go, because the faster you will be using it up by staying right with it, by being excited about having that process. So that in and of itself is an art form. The first art form to master is simply being here and now with what is happening. Trusting that what is happening for a reason. Otherwise it wouldn't be happening. So if you are willing to accept that whatever part of the process is happening for the purpose of putting you in touch with more of yourself, so that you can expand and get that reflection back from reality of your expansion, then you will be excited about anything the process has to show you. It will actually be experienced as a piece of performance art. And by getting into it and diving into it and being the performance artist and the art piece itself, then you will allow it to move very rapidly through you, to process very rapidly, because you're willing to accept everything that's happening as necessary, as a part of the piece, as a part of the art, as something to look at, as something to investigate, as something that will increase your understanding of who and what you are as a co-creator. If you look at it that way and stay in that energy, believe me, very quickly you will explode in many different directions, and your reality will explode toward you with many different things that will support you.
So that is the sample of the unfolding higher consciousness news around the world this week. Cosmic Vision News is broadcast weekly from the CosmicVisionNews.com website. Links to stories used in this broadcast are published in the show summary, which is available also on the website. CVN can be followed through its Facebook page, Minds page, Unseen page, and YouTube channel, as well as on Twitter, Google+, and LinkedIn. Thank you for sharing your time with me. I'm Jeffrey West, reminding you that we are here to heal, not harm. We are here to love, not hate. And we are here to create, not destroy. Until our next moment of now, stay grounded in love, hold the vision of light and peace in your hearts, and keep your eyes to the skies. Disclosure is unfolding all around you. Namaste.